Welcome everybody to Mom Street USA. My name is Jackie, aka Wishes Mama, and on today's episode, we are continuing our one-day park strategies that we have been working our way through both Universal and Disney parks down in Orlando. So if you've missed it so far, we have covered USF, we have covered Magic Kingdom, we have covered Animal Kingdom, and we have done Islands of Adventure. So we are 4 out of 7 of the total parks that we are going to be covering in this series. And today we are going to be talking about Epcot. So we are back at Disney today to discuss our one-day park strategy for Epcot. Now, here's the thing about this series, and you've heard us say this before, if you've heard these other episodes in this series, is we are going to go over what is kind of the best general plan for anybody visiting the park. That being said, there may be things on this list that you're like, nope, my group doesn't want to do that, especially some of these attractions at Epcot. It can be a little bit polarizing just because there are some bigger thrill rides that you can potentially get on over at this park. So keep that in mind as you are listening today and as you are looking through the list of attractions here, because it is really split. There are quite a few bigger thrill rides, and then there are a lot of more dark ride experiences as well. So keep that in mind. Something else to note is we are going to continue with the policy, or not policy, what's the word I'm looking for? We are going to continue with the trend of doing kind of a 2 different approach method. So we're going to first talk about doing it with lightning lanes and what you should book and how that breakdown may look for you. And then we are going to swap and talk about it. If you are just planning to do standby, what is your best course of action to try to get as much done as possible? So all that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our plans for Epcot. A couple general notes about Epcot. You definitely want to arrive 30 to 40 minutes before you can gain access to the park. So again, remember, Disney parks do offer that 30-minute early entry to any resort guests that are staying at Disney. So if you are staying on Disney property, you can get in 30 minutes before park open. Epcot almost almost, because everything could change, you never know, but almost always has a 9 o'clock a.m. opening, which means your early entry for resort guests is going to be 8:30. You are going to want to get there 30 to 40 minutes before that time. And the reasoning behind that is you really need to position yourself well for rope drop to be able to get to the most attractions as you possibly can. That being said, also, rope drop happens at 2 different locations in this park, and this is the only park that has this kind of happen at Disney. So there are 2 entrances to Epcot. If you're unfamiliar, the main entrance that happens to be right by the front of the park by Spaceship Earth, which is the big iconic golf ball type attraction. And then the second entrance is called the International Gateway. And that happens out in World Showcase. It is between the UK pavilion and the France pavilion. So if you are someone that is taking the Skyliner, or you are staying at like Boardwalk or Beach Club or Yacht Club, Swan and Dolphin, some of those kind of in that general area, that would be the entrance that you're coming to. If you're someone that is taking the monorail, or you're driving, or you are taking a resort bus, you are all going to enter through the front of the park by Spaceship Earth. So 2 different entrances. It all really depends on the way that you're going. Oh, and rideshare. Sorry, I should mention that. Lyft, Uber, and the minivan that is operated through Lyft as well will come to the front of the park. So where you enter can greatly impact what you do. So you'll hear me say that a few times as we talk about kind of your initial first plans when you get to Epcot, because it really truly just geographically on the map does matter, because Epcot is a very large park. It initially, brief history, was supposed to be 2 different concepts for 2 different parks, and they kind of ended up putting them together. So you have the whole front section of the park. So that is the World Discovery, World Nature, and World, I can't remember the other one, but whatever those ones are called, they just renamed them, and those names have not stuck in my head yet. But then the back part of the park, kind of the further you go into the park, is World Showcase. And that is a very large mile loop that has all of the different countries in their pavilions. So kind of two different halves to the park. So again, that's really why your entry point makes a big difference. When we talk about rope drop here in a minute, you'll hear me give you kind of a couple different options for that. So let's talk about lightning lanes, because the first thing that we are going to, the first plan of action that we are going to talk about is if you're utilizing lightning lanes. Now, I do think that lightning lanes are very beneficial at Epcot. Can you get on a lot without them and without waiting for, an hour for attractions? Yes, absolutely. However, now that Test Track has reopened, it really does benefit you and give you more flexibility and freedom to enjoy Epcot if you've got lightning lanes. Now, I understand that's not in everyone's budget. We are going to talk about not using lightning lanes later, but I really do think they're beneficial for Epcot. So, a couple reminders about lightning lanes. You can pre-book ahead of your trip. If you are on property, it's 7 days out from your check-in date at your resort. If you are off property, it is 3 days before your first park day. So that is when you'll be able to jump online at 7 a.m. Eastern on your mobile app, your My Disney Experience app, and pre-book your selections. So ahead of time, here is my suggestion for what I would say you should book. Now, there are tiers at this park. So we've talked about that briefly. We did talk about that at Magic Kingdom as well. So some of the top rides are in tier 1 and some of the rides are in tier 2. When you pre-book, you can do 1 tier 1 and 2 tier 2s. So you'll hear me mention that here just a second. Your tier 1 is going to be, my suggestion is Remy's Ratatouille Adventure as your tier 1. Now, there are several other options that are great as well. Frozen is another great option for your tier 1, as is Test Track. But I would suggest Remy. It tends to be the hardest one to find a lightning lane for later in the day. So that is why I suggest that one. The other reason I suggest that one is because then you can plan more accordingly when you make the trek out to the France Pavilion. So we talked about that Epcot is kind of two parks squished into one. Well, where Remy is located in the park, in the France Pavilion, is pretty far into the back. So it's one of those things where once you commit to going out there, you commit to World Showcase. So you really want to have a little bit more control over when it is that you head out to the France Pavilion so that you're not needlessly making that mile loop around World Showcase Lagoon more than you have to do. So I would suggest booking that for your tier 1. Now, if your family doesn't want to do Remy, I would suggest one of the other ones. Any of them are great options for tier 1. For tier 2, I would select Soarin'. And then my third option would be the Seas with Nemo and Friends, because that ride tends to get a really long wait. It's very, very cute, very, very enjoyable dark ride that is Finding Nemo themed. And because it is accessible for all ages and because of where it's located at the park, it does tend to get a longer wait. So I would suggest booking that for your third pre-selection. Now, ideally, what I would suggest is starting those lightning lanes about an hour after park open, maybe even an hour and a half after park open. So I would book something like Soarin' around 10 and the Seas with Nemo and Friends around 10:45 if you're able to manipulate your times that way. The other thing is your time for Remy, just get it as early as you can. That one's going to have less flexibility for going in and modifying it because it is such a popular attraction for lightning lanes that you just want to get it as early as the app will let you and call it good. Now, if you've got kiddos that need to take a nap or things like that, you can plan your lightning lanes around that. But again, we're talking, you've got 1 day in Epcot. We're trying to make the most of your time. So just get it as early as you possibly can. Please remember that you can always hold 3 multi-pass lightning lanes at a time. So as soon as you use your first one, then you can go onto the app and book your next one. So keep that in mind as well. As far as single pass lightning lanes at Epcot, we're just looking at Cosmic Rewind. definitely beneficial for you to be able to purchase that just to save yourself the hour plus wait that it typically is. So you want to book Cosmic Rewind based on when you think you're going to venture over to that side of the park. So I didn't exactly give a time for that one just because it may depend on what you do with the additional information that I'm about to give you for what order to do your different other attractions at the park. So keep that in mind with when you're booking your time for Cosmic Rewind. You want to kind of see where you think you'll be at what time and kind of go from there for when you're creating your plan before you book your lightning lanes ahead of time. All of that being said, let's talk about what you're going to do at Rope Drop. So, with your itinerary, I'm going to go based on the fact that you booked Remy's. So we don't have to worry about rope dropping that. So that's kind of what I'm going to go off of with this itinerary. So you can substitute these first rides depending on what you booked for your tier 1 and what is left out of tier 1. But whatever your tier 1 attractions are that your group wants to do, that is what you're going to head to first. So if it were me, and I knew I had a Remy booked and I knew I had a Guardians of the Galaxy booked, I would do either Frozen or Test Track for my rope drop. If you're entering at the front of the park, I would go to Test Track. If you're entering at uh, World Showcase at International Gateway, I would go to Frozen. So that would be my suggestion for that. And again, getting there 30 to 40 minutes early is going to set you up in a really great place for those attractions to be in and out within about 20 minutes. Ideally, you would be able to hit maybe both of those before the lines get too long and before your first lightning lane time, right? Because I said our first lightning lane is not going to be until about 10 o'clock. So if we're early entry, that gives us from 8:30 to 10 to do both Frozen and Test Track. Or again, this is where you kind of just have to know what your top choices are at Epcot, because if you're a big Guardians of the Galaxy fan and you love Cosmic Rewind, or that's like your top attraction at Epcot that you want to do, then go ahead and rope drop that. So it really just depends on whatever your top choice ride is for your party. And don't be afraid to split up for this rope drop time. Your lightning lanes for your group will likely be booked together if you're doing it, all together on your app. So if you've got a group that really wants to hit Frozen, or if you really want to do Guardians of the Galaxy, then that is what, you can divide and conquer that way when it comes to that. So that would be my suggestion. Go to either your top ride and then your second ride, ideally getting them both in before that 10 a.m. lightning lane start. So like we mentioned earlier, 10 a.m. Will be your Soarin' time. So after you tap in for Soarin', you're going to want to book Test Track or Frozen if you weren't able to do them standby. So whatever your next big ride is that you weren't able to hit already in the morning, that's going to be the first one that you try to book for your lightning lanes. Now, chances are good that something like Frozen or Test Track may be sold out or maybe later in the day. That's where your modifying comes into place. And if you need more information on how to modify, then you need to go back to our episode that we did on lightning lanes and Genie Plus to get my step-by-step directions on how it is that you are going to work to modify that and what the little tricks are to be able to do that. And if it is available, then go ahead and grab it. And you can always still modify it for an earlier time as well. So by around 11, you should have gone through probably 3 to 4 attractions. If you're already in the building with Soarin', go ahead and do Living with the Land while you're in the land building, because that will save you the trek of having to go back into the land later on throughout your day. And then after that will be your next lightning lane time, because like we said, ideally you're booking Nemo for around 11 or so, and then you will be able to redeem that. And as soon as you have done that, you can do one of two things. You can either book a Journey into the Imagination with Figment if it's like almost an immediate time, just to save a little bit on that wait. Or you can do that standby and still achieve still have the ability to get on that ride, and then book Mission Space. So those would be my next two options whenever it comes to booking after you have tapped in for your Nemo Lightning Lane. So at that point in time, It may be a little bit close to lunch. You may be able to get on one more attraction before lunch. Ideally, the goal would be to kind of finish off that world nature side of the front part of the park before your lunch break. As far as lunch goes, lots of options. It really just depends on where in the parks you are. I typically like to do festival booths. Now, the tricky thing about festival booths is they are all out in World Showcase, or at least close to World Showcase for the most part. You have a few that are scattered in throughout the other parts of the park, but ultimately most of them are out in World Showcase. So you really have to kind of plan accordingly. Now, if you're on that side of the park where Figment and the land are, there is a cluster of festival booths that are just past Figment as you're going towards the Canada Pavilion. There's a cluster of about 3 of them right there that you may be able to just grab a quick snack. You can also eat inside of the land pavilion. Downstairs, they have just a little cafeteria style kind of quick service Sunshine Seasons that is in there that you can grab lunch at. So those would be your options if you are on that part of the park. You can also hop to the center of the park and visit the main kind of quick service eatery that is right by the center of the park that is called Connections Eatery. So that is also an option that you have that's not too far and kind of on your way towards your next attractions anyway at that point in time. So that kind of takes you up to your lunch period. Now, again, if there are things on that list that you're like, nope, we don't want to do it, great. Skip it and move on to the next one and continue on throughout your process of working your way through Epcot. But then, in theory, after you have enjoyed a lunch, you won't have as many rides to do because you will have gone on almost all of them. So after lunch, you will have Mission Space, if that is something you want to do. I know a lot of people feel some type of way about that ride, but Mission Space is an option that you can book. After you have tapped into Mission Space, you are going to just look to book anything that's left. So at that point in time, you're not going to have too many rides left. You will have Spaceship Earth as an attraction that you can book. And then you can always go back and book things that you did via standby in the morning if they're still available. They may or may not be available at that time, or you may or may not have to work a little bit of lightning lane magic and use your app to kind of try to see if you can get a time to pop up for those. So Mission Space, then from Mission Space, I would head out into, you have one of two things that you can do. You can either circle back to the front of the park and go on Spaceship Earth. I would highly suggest if you're going to try to plan to do Spaceship Earth after Mission Space, that you have a lightning lane for it because it is right at the front of the park. And it is kind of a slower moving and slower loading attraction. There are people that just go there because, oh, this is a ride. Let's go ahead and ride that right when you walk in the front of the park. So it does get a long wait time because of that reason. So I would go ahead and book a lightning lane if it's available and if it's somewhat near the time you need it to be, just to save you a little bit because it could be like a 20 to 30-minute wait for Spaceship Earth in that time of night or afternoon, I guess it would be at that point in time. So keep that in mind. So after Mission Space, you can circle back to Spaceship Earth, or you can leave Spaceship Earth until a little bit later in the day, closer maybe to around dinner time. But it really just depends on what your plans are for the evening and if you plan to be out in World Showcase wandering around. So after you have made a decision, Mission Space, Spaceship Earth, and then you're going to head out into World Showcase. Whenever you go through the Mexico Pavilion, make sure you hit Three Caballeros that is in there. The Grand Fiesta Tour starring the Three Caballeros, I think is the official title of that attraction, which I love. The cute, super cute boat ride in the Mexico Pavilion. And then from there, you will just have your time for Remy that you have booked already, that you've been kind of holding in your back pocket since you pre-booked your lightning lanes ahead of your trip. And so whenever that time becomes available, you can utilize that. So your time for Remy will determine potentially which direction you go when you get to World Showcase. If you don't have a Remy time until closer to dinner, you can go either left or right when you get out into World Showcase. If you've got a time that's like 2 o'clock or so, 3 o'clock or so, then you may want to kind of head directly towards France first to make sure that you are not having to double back or like zoom through some of the countries to get to France to get to Ratatouille. So keep that in mind when you're looking at which direction you want to go when you get out into World Showcase. So after you have ridden Remy, that will pretty much take care of all of the attractions that you've got over at Epcot. So with Lightning Lanes, very, very achievable to the point where about 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you could potentially be done with the majority of the attractions at the park, which is wonderful because Epcot has so many other things to see outside of just the attractions to do. There are so many amazing pavilions out in the World Showcase. There are live performances and all sorts of other things. So let's talk about some other things that you can enjoy in your afternoon at Epcot. Like I mentioned, there are several shows that happen out in World Showcase if you are someone who enjoys either live entertainment or they have a lot of what Disney has called in the past edutainment. So it's like educating entertainment type attractions as well. So things like the American Adventure, Canada Far and Wide, Reflections of China, those are all really great videos that you can go and view. There is the also in the France Pavilion, it rotates with another video, but there's a Beauty and the Beast sing-along that is really super fun that you can do as well. There are tons of character meet and greets, especially during the morning and into the early afternoon out in World Showcase. Almost every country has, like, a specialty character that meets out there. So they're gonna be located in the area in which their stories take place. So one of my all-time favorite meet and greets is the Pooh and Friends meet and greet in the UK pavilion, where you can meet Winnie the Pooh inside Christopher Robin's bedroom, which is just, ugh, so much fun. It's so magical. I love that meet and greet. Over in France, you'll find Belle, you'll find Aurora, Sleeping Beauty over there. In China, you'll find Mulan meeting. In Germany, you can find Snow White meeting. So lots of different princesses and characters that you can find out there as well. Also, of course, don't forget about the festival offerings. The festival food is so much fun to walk around and see all the additional booths that they add because during the festivals, there are not only 11 countries that you can visit, but then there are all these little pop-up food kiosks that are typically representatives of other countries that you may find. You may find something like Greece, or you may find Hawaii even, or just other different palettes that you can taste. And they give you a smaller portion size, so it's nice to kind of snack your way through and try some different things that maybe you wouldn't normally try. If you had to order a full entree of it. So that is super fun. And they've also got tons of activities that are typically associated with those Epcot festivals as well. If you hop back several episodes on our Mom Street feed, you will find that one of the first hub episodes we did with Duck and Jess, we did a whole deep dive on festivals at Epcot. So take a look at that if you want to know more information about what those festivals are and like what they have to offer. So, but that is definitely a huge draw at Epcot and a great thing that you want to take advantage of whenever you're visiting there. So shows, characters, festivals, we talked about the attractions, a couple other things that are just fun at Epcot that you can fill your afternoon time with because your lightning lanes are all achieved and accomplished. There's a really fun DuckTales World Showcase adventure game that you can play, and all you need to do is download the Play Disney app on your phone, and you can go through the different countries and kind of get some storytelling little adventures on your phone, and there are things that will react in the different countries to the story that you're being told. So that is a super fun way to experience World Showcase. There are the aquariums in the seas and the play places inside of Nemo as well that you can experience and have fun with. There's always a playground outside of Creations. So we talked about Creations earlier. As you're exiting through the side door, there's always a play area right there for kiddos. There's also the ImageWorks play area at the exit of Figment as well. And then if you are out in World Showcase, they do have something called KidCot that you can have your kiddos participate in as you're going through the different countries. They have little books or like little coloring that they can do, and they can talk to the cast members that are out in those country pavilions. because almost all of them that work in the pavilions are from the country of the pavilion that you're visiting. So when you go to Morocco, you're going to have people that come from Morocco that are working there. So they are always willing to share information and cultural facts about their area, which is super fun, especially if you've got kiddos that are, like, really into that, like mine are. Mine have a really fun time doing that over at Epcot. So that is, again, another super fun thing that you can do to kind of fill in some time in your afternoon. Now, you're not gonna have time to do all of that. You're gonna have to kinda pick and choose what sounds the most entertaining and it appeals best to the group that you're traveling in, but those are all really great options at Epcot that you can do. Again, with food, that will take you kind of up to and probably through dinner, but I do just wanna mention that typically, if you're following this for dinner, you're gonna end up being out in World Showcase. So, festival booths or any of the quick service options that they have, there are also a ton of great table service, so if you think that you're gonna have time to do a table service restaurant, then by all means, go ahead and book that. With lightning lanes, I do think that that is totally possible. Like I said, that you could have the majority of your attractions done before about 4 p.m. So that could be something that you do to kind of enjoy the evening after running around like crazy doing Epcot all throughout the day. And then anything after dinner that you weren't able to do, or things that you did by standby that you want to do lightning lane, or things that you did lightning lane that you want to do standby to do it again because the weights have dropped, that's your time to do that. That's that cleanup time that we have talked about in all of these episodes. That's kind of universally the best thing to do after dinner, is that kind of last hurrah, look at our list and make sure that we've done everything that we're able to do. And then do keep in mind that at Epcot, the nighttime fireworks show that happens over there always happens at part, almost always. I shouldn't say always because there are a few times that it doesn't, but almost always happens at park close. So park close is, for the majority of the year, is 9 p.m. And that is when that fireworks show will go off. So you may have to decide if you want to be in a line at 8:58 p.m. to try to get on one last attraction and miss the fireworks show, or if you're okay with not doing a last attraction and finding a spot around the World Showcase Lagoon for right now the show is called Luminous. So depending on your preference and what your group wants to do, you can kind of plan your evening accordingly. Do also keep in mind that in the evening times, especially when I think only when there are festivals running right now, but I could be wrong, but especially when there are festivals running, there's also a really cute little LED light show with a song that happens on Spaceship Earth. And it's typically themed to whatever the current festival is that they're doing. They've done a couple different shows on there. So if that's something that you really like, I really like those shows. I think they're super fun. But they're a little tricky to get to if you're all the way out in World Showcase because it is such a long haul to get to the very front of the park. So keep that in mind as well. But if you're already going to be in the front of the park because you're not planning to watch the fireworks, then definitely catch that little show on Spaceship Earth because I think it's a super fun little thing that they brought these LED lights on Spaceship Earth for the 50th anniversary that they did, and they've just stuck around, and I love that we still have those on Spaceship Earth, so that is something that I always like to try to do when I'm at Epcot, for sure. Okay, so all of that being said, I think that takes place of your day with lightning lanes, but now let's talk about what should we do if we are not using lightning lanes. So, if you are headed to Epcot without lightning lanes, a couple things to consider. First of all, I mentioned this a little bit at Animal Kingdom as well, but if you are able to scrape just a little bit of money per person, maybe you don't have enough to do multi-pass for everybody, but maybe you have enough just to do a single pass and to grab a Guardians of the Galaxy single pass. That would be greatly beneficial if you're someone that has a long list of rides that you want to accomplish at Epcot. Just because there are so many top tier attractions that people want to go on that do get lengthy waits, being able to cut at least one of them will be a big benefit of your day. Now, if not, totally understand. Not everybody's budgets Allow them to be able to do that. Totally understandable. Disney is not cheap. But just keep that in mind that you're going to hear me kind of talk about, okay, you could do this, or you could do this, or you could do this, because it really just depends on that. So again, you're going to want to arrive 45 minutes before park open for rope drop. Remember, there are 2 different entrances. All of that we talked about a little bit ago is going to still apply whether you're using lightning lanes or not, right? So a couple options. If you are entering at International Gateway, which is the Skyliner, Yacht and Beach and Boardwalk, Swan and Dolphin, those resorts over that direction, you are going to want to rope drop Remy, along with everyone else, unfortunately. But that is going to be your best bet for getting on that ride. Now, Remy does have a single rider line, and most of the time it's a pretty decent single rider line. So if your group is someone that is able to utilize single rider, definitely keep that in mind and do not rope drop Remy, because you do not need to wait in that line, and they may not have single rider open that early in the day. Do that later. Hit it on your way back around World Showcase. So if you're going to do single rider, don't worry about going to Remy first. So if that's you, then I would maybe do something like Frozen or Test Track instead, if you are planning to single rider Remy. If you're entering at the front of the park by Spaceship Earth, you really have to decide what is your top option. 3 choices that you have that are all equally great choices and will all depend on what your group wants the most. But front of the park rope drop options would be either Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, Frozen, or Test Track. So any of those 3, whichever one is the top choice for your group, that's what you're going to want to rope drop first. Again, getting there early so you position yourself in the front of the mass crowd that's going to be there at rope drop, going to those same attractions. You want to make sure that you have to kind of position yourself accordingly for that, which is why that 45 minutes at least is super important, so that you can position yourself, because they will kind of let you in stages. So at Epcot, at both entrances, they do have a spot where people are checking for early entry. So if you've got early entry, you can tap in earlier than the park officially opens for early entry and go to those attractions. So I didn't mention this earlier, but I definitely want to mention it now. So for example, the last trip that I was on, we stayed at Art of Animation. We entered through the Skyliner. We got there early. We tapped in a little bit inside of the gate after we scanned in. And then once we were cleared that we had early entry, we went and queued up for Frozen before the queue even opened. Once the queue opened, we literally walked right through it and got on the ride. So they will let you queue up outside of those different attractions, which is why it's so important to get there early and set yourself up for success being in the right positioning. So you're going to have to choose between, again, Cosmic Rewind, Frozen, or Test Track. Now, Test Track also has a single rider line, and it's a pretty good single rider line as well. So again, same with Remy. If you're planning to single rider it, save it until a little bit later in the probably late morning, depending on where you're going to be on and when you're going to be on that side of the park. So you really just have to make your decision after that. The earlier you arrive and the quicker you can get your first ride done at rope drop, the better chance you have at making it to a second ride without as long of a line. All of those attractions, Remy, Cosmic Rewind, Frozen, Test Track, are all going to have an hour wait by 11 o'clock, 11:30. So you really want to try to get in and get those done as quickly as you possibly can and know the order that you want to do them. So again, Remy is kind of on an island in France. So that is something you really have to plan accordingly for. But if you look at Test Track and Guardians of the Galaxy, they're fairly close to each other. So those are pretty easy to pair together. And then from Test Track, if you cut by the Odyssey Pavilion to get to Norway, it's not terrible. It's not great, but it's not terrible. So Test Track and Frozen would be 2 ones that I would group together as my top 2 rides for early entry time. But again, the earlier you get there, the quicker you get through the queue for your first ride, the better chance you have at getting in a second line before those hour waits pop up. So I'm going to give you kind of a generic ride order for what I think will you'll probably be able to do without using lightning lanes. Keep in mind that you're just going to have to plan accordingly for when your lunch and dinner breaks are going to be, kind of like we mentioned earlier. So you're not going to hear me say, well, after this, you should break for lunch, because it's really just going to depend on what time it is and how quickly you get through these different attractions. So first, like we said, you're going to choose between Cosmic Rewind, Frozen, Test Track, Remy, and kind of figure out the best course of action and attack for those 4 attractions. Because again, those are your top tier, top e-ticket attractions at Epcot. Now, if you don't get through all of those in the morning, a couple different things that you can do. They will, about 4 to 6 o'clock, typically for that dinner time, even all the way maybe till 7, some of those rides do dip down closer to like a 35-minute wait. If you see one of those 4 rides that I've been talking about under a 40-minute wait, go ride it because it may not be under that again for the rest of the night, and you don't have lightning lanes to help you with that. So if you see it under 40 minutes, that is your cue to go ride it. If you can't wait for 40 minutes or your kiddos can't, you're going to have to make some tough decisions and tough choices with that for sure. So again, those 4 are kind of your first ones to tackle. If you don't have them done in the morning, that's okay. Wait until closer to dinner time or end of the night to circle back to do any of those top 4 ones that you didn't get to in the morning. After your morning little swoop, I would head to Soarin'. Now, the thing with Soarin' is, again, depending on the day, it can sometimes pop up to like a 45-minute wait by 11 o'clock, just like those other ones. It will come back down, so be patient with it. If Soarin' is showing like a 40-45, just wait until that 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon and come back to that. So skip it and move on. And then I would, after that, hit Mission Space, followed by Spaceship Earth. Again, keep an eye on this wait time because it is the front of the park. People like to go there right away. If it's longer than 20, come back and circle back again. So I know that sounds like a lot of circling back that I'm telling you guys to do, but that's just where your app is going to be your best friend, unfortunately. It is what it is. I know a lot of people don't enjoy the fact that we all have to live on our phones when we're at Disney, but even if you're not using lightning lanes, you're still having to check those wait times on your phone. So Soarin', Mission Space, Spaceship Earth. After that, the rest of your list that's left, really easy to get into because that's The Seas with Nemo and Friends and Turtle Talk, Figment, Living with the Land, Three Caballeros, and then you've got your meet and greets and shows that we talked about before as well. So Epcot is really tricky for half of the park and really easy for the other half of the park, which is a little frustrating when it comes to the way that they do their lightning lanes and things like that that we talked about earlier. But really, if you can have a good course of attack for those top 4 rides that we talked about, the rest of it will all fall into place because you'll be able to get on almost everything else within 2025 most days. Now, if you're someone that's visiting peak season, holidays, busy weekends, run Disney events, you know, I said holidays, but like long weekend holidays, right? You're going to need to do something with lightning lanes at that point in time. Again, especially now with Test Track being reopened again after the refurb. When it was down, Epcot was way easier to navigate without lightning lanes because it was really just Remy and Frozen. And at that point in time, Cosmic Rewind was on a virtual queue. So it's a little frustrating, but I really do suggest using lightning lanes if you're able to, because that list that I just gave you for the non-lightning lanes, you're probably going to have to skip some things and make some choices based on your group and what the wants and needs are for the group that you're traveling with. So again, like I said, lunch and dinner, you're just going to have to find kind of times within that segment to figure out what makes the most sense and where you are in the park to grab something to eat. So after dinner, you may or may not have a ton of time depending on what you've done throughout the day and when you've eaten. Again, we always suggest trying to eat a little before or a little after those peak times. But if there's anything that you haven't done, or if you're still missing one of those big four from earlier in the day, your best bet at that point in time, if it's after dinner and you still have a top attraction that you want to try to do, chances are you're not going to be able to do the fireworks show unless you're willing to wait at whatever time is posted for that top tier attraction after dinner. So you really just have to decide after that point in time. Again, the park closes at the same time as the nighttime fireworks show happens. So 9 p.m. closure would be 9 p.m. fireworks, which means at 8:59 you are still eligible to get in line, but once it turns to 9 o'clock, those lines are closed for all of the attractions. So keep that in mind. Hopefully that at least gave you some framework. These itineraries are really tricky because it really does depend on your particular group and what your top options are that you're wanting to do. All of that being said, if you have an upcoming trip and you need help and you're like, this is overwhelming, I don't know what to do, please reach out to us. Please send us an email. We would love to hear from you. Even if you don't need help and you just want to say hi, we would love to hear from all of our extended Mom Street community. We are so thankful for you guys. So we would love to hear from you. But if you truly do need help, send me an email, momstreetusa@gmail.com, because I love helping people with itineraries for their trips. So I would be more than happy to take a look at your group, figure out what your course of action is, whether it's lightning lanes or no lightning lanes. I would love to be able to help you do that. So please reach out if you need assistance with any of those types of things. So that pretty much wraps up our one day at Epcot. Again, this is in the middle of our one day park series that we are working on. We are just a few parks away from kind of wrapping this up for this year. And then come 2026, we are going to have something else. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But do keep in mind, you can always find us on our platforms, wherever you listen to podcasts, and on our YouTube as well. We are Mom Street USA on all of the places that you would look to find us. So please be sure that you're following us there so you don't ever miss anything. There have been a few exclusive YouTubes that have been posted that have not really been run anywhere else. The whole conversation that we had about Epic Universe just a few weeks ago, whenever I got back from my trip there, is on our YouTube and exists only there. So if you want to check that out, be sure to pop over to our YouTube channel for that. And as always, be sure that you are hitting that subscribe button or follow button. We never put anything behind a paywall, but your follows and your subscriptions are a huge support to everything that we are doing over here at Mom Street USA. We do have a Patreon account as well. We are Mom Street USA over there too, and we typically will post a little bit of exclusive content over there, hoping to really start to utilize that a lot more even in the new year of 2026 as we look forward to continuing on with our journey of helping families make their trips to Disney even easier is the overall goal. So thank you guys all so much for being here for this episode of Mom Street USA. I really appreciate you all tuning in, and I hope to hear from some of you soon, and I will catch you on the next episode of Mom Street USA. Bye, everyone.